all of a sudden there was a loud crack and I saw a lightning bolt come out of the sky. And then my spirit just pops up right out of my body. And I see this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous garden. It was a beautiful city, what I call the glorious city. And there was a bunch of other people, a whole crowd of other people. I saw Jesus coming out of he was just walking out of that grove of trees, and I just kind of stood there. You know, he was so beautiful.
We are here with Sharon Milliman, and she had an amazing NDE. She was struck by a lightning. She went to heaven. She met Jesus. She met God, and she met deceased loved ones. Hello, Sharon. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming. So, what can you tell us about that day in which you were struck by a lightning?
Well, I was sitting outside on the back steps of my house, and there was like a little roof that went over top of the stairs. And I was talking on a cordless phone, and it started to rain. And I just kept talking because I thought, this is a cordless phone. It doesn't have a cord. It's not plugged in. I'll be okay. So um, then I heard what sounded like thunder in the distance. And then all of a sudden there was a loud crack, and I saw a lightning bolt come out of the sky, and it hit my arm. Now I know there's an arc, it'll come out of the sky and it'll come up to the ground, and then there's an arc, but I definitely looked up at the sky when I heard that crack, and that lightning bolt had just hit my arm. And when it did, it hit my right arm. And when it did, it went that pain. I felt a searing, burning, agonizing pain go across through my arm and across my chest. And the lightning went through my body, and then it traveled underneath the house and blew the transformer that was in front of our house. And so the whole neighborhood was just everybody was in the dark. But there was actually char marks that they're still there. I have pictures of the char marks that are still there on the concrete steps where I was sitting. But I only felt that pain, it was a horrible burning sensation. And then my spirit just pops up right out of my body. It's kind of like peeling a banana. I just peeled right up out of myself. And there I am laying on the ground. There was no pain, none at all. I felt better than I'd ever felt in my life, really. But I didn't know. Everything had happened so quickly that I didn't realize I was dead. And so I see myself laying there, but I had no attachment to my body or anything else. I wasn't even thinking about this person laying there. And I walked up the stairs and went into the house. And when I did, I looked at the curtains that were on the kitchen above the sink, which was right in my view as I walk in the back door. And I noticed that those curtains were not my curtains. So, and everything had this weird burnt gold look to it. It was very strange. And so I walked from the kitchen into the dining room, and I'm looking at the furniture, and none of the furniture is my stuff. It's my house. I can get around. I know what rooms there are, but nothing in there was my stuff. And I couldn't figure that out. I was confused. And so I went from the dining room. We had these pocket doors, the sliding doors that open and shut. And I always kept them open so the house was opened up. And so I walked from the dining room into the living room, and that furniture wasn't mine. And I was hearing this old time radio show. It sounded like something from back in the 20s or 30s. And I'm walking around and I'm thinking, we don't have a radio. I don't listen to the radio. I've never heard that sound before. It sounded like something you'd hear off the Waltons or something. And I couldn't figure out where the radio was. And there was no power. There were no lights like we have now. It was like, although it was my house. So I'm not sure what that was all about, but it seemed like it lasted forever. But it was probably only a minute or two, and I'm wandering around looking for my kids, my husband. Nobody's there, just me, and nothing was mine. And just about the time I started to panic, this huge, loving, formless presence appeared. And I knew the presence was God, but he had no form. I'm calling him a he because he came to me as a man. So that's why I call him a he. But he had no form, no gender, nothing. It was just a spirit. But I felt love like I have never felt in my life. It just filled me completely. Every cell in my body was just overflowing with this enormous love that I felt. And so it was almost like he put his arm around my waist, lifted me up, and was carrying me, is how it felt. I felt wrapped in his arms, and we did not go up or down. We went laterally. We moved sideways, and we moved at great speed through these pink and gold clouds. And they were the most beautiful clouds I'd ever seen. This beautiful rosy pink color and this liquid gold that ran through the clouds. And so we're traveling at great speed through these clouds. And at the end of the clouds is a garden. And I'm looking all around. The presence is still with me. And I'm looking all around and I see this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous garden. And it felt like it was probably 75 degrees, zero humidity. The sky was blue. There were puffy clouds. I did see what looked like it was a round sphere, but it looked like it was like if you saw the moon during the daytime. But I didn't think much about that. But it was really interesting because that whole place was like the most perfect spring day multiplied by 10 bazillion. It was absolutely breathtaking. And the colors, I saw flowers and I saw trees and there was grass and I saw different landscapes. My awareness and my senses were so heightened. I could still smell, and the air was just sweet and crisp. And I could see without turning my head. I could see all the way around me. So I could see the hills and the valleys and the plains and the mountains. I saw it was incredible. And the colors of the flowers were so brilliant. And they were, like the pinks were pinker and the reds were redder and everything was, I want to say it's very earth-like, but not. I mean, it's a bazillion times better than what you'd ever find here. And there were, let's see, there were two men, and this is just at the entrance. I'm seeing all this just at the very entrance. So I'm blown away, but that presence is still there, and I'm feeling all this love and all of this acceptance, which I've never felt in my life. And it was huge. It was just huge. And there were two men that came forward from the garden, and they were wearing it's a very soft ivory linen. Their shirts were open, and they had like lounge pants on, and they were barefoot. So they reminded me of like they had been on the beach all day, and they were glowing, just literally glowing. And they were probably between late 20s, early 30s. And they had curly hair, like mine, curly hair. And it was a darker blonde than mine, but it had my light color running through it. And the highlights just made them glow even more. And at first I thought they were angels. And then as soon as they smiled, it was like, oh my gosh, I know who you are. I had two baby brothers who had passed away when I was just a baby. And these were my two brothers. And they were absolutely breathtaking. And I kept telling them, oh my gosh, I wish Dad could see you. He would be so proud of you, because they did. They looked just like him when he was a young man. And they were just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So they were walking with me. So I had Michael on one side of me, Stephen on the other, and this huge loving presence moved from beside me to behind me. And so here we are, all of us were walking together in this little group, and we start walking further into the garden. And if I could draw, it would be great because I could show you where everything was. But I do stick figures, and that just probably wouldn't work. But as you're going into the garden off to the left, it was like a wooded area. There were trees and the flowers and things. But there was a field stone wall that looked like it reminded me of a castle wall that was kind of crumbling and coming down. And it had pink roses growing up and over it. And it was absolutely breathtaking. And I saw that exact thing in my other NDE too. So, I mean, it was all of these landmarks I was noticing. I could see what looked like it was in the distance, but because of my awareness, I could see it very clearly. I could see minute detail very, like as if it was close up to my face. And it was a beautiful city, what I call the glorious city. And inside the city, you could see all of these buildings that were inside the city, and they're all made of like alabaster, and they have archways and columns, and I could even see the detail that was etched into the marble over top of the archway, and then you have the columns. It was incredible. It was so beautiful. But in the center of the city was this huge round building, and it had a golden dome on the top. It was so beautiful. That golden dome just stood right out there. I don't know what was in there. I really wanted to go inside there. I did not go inside that building. But there were several other buildings that I did get to go through. I mean, they were taking me on this tour of the city. And but as we were taking the tour, we stopped along the way, and there was a bunch of other people, a whole crowd of other people that joined us. And it looked like they were from all different time periods. And I knew who they were, and they knew me, but I couldn't figure out where I knew them from. And it was just like they were there for love and support. And it was like we were having this huge reunion. And I kept thinking, where do I know you? I know you, but where do I know you? You know? And the women, they had these beautiful gowns from different time periods. And the men wore suits or pants or whatever. And some people wore lounge clothes, and there were other people that were wearing modern clothes like we do now. But it was like I could see the different time periods. And yet every single one of them looked like they were 25 or 30 years old, and their face was pink and cheeks were, you know, they were happy and smiling, and everyone was young. I didn't see any old people. I didn't see any sick people. There were no wheelchairs or crutches, or, and I didn't see anybody crying or sad. It was just, I was just like blown away. And I didn't even know I was dead yet. I still had no idea where I was at. What's going on? Well, that's about the time my brothers had told me you know, you died. You got hit by the lightning. You died. You're dead. You're here with us. You're in heaven. I'm like, well, okay, if this is death, I can do this. This is good. This is fine. You know, because one minute I'm here and the next minute I'm there. You know, and I'm still me. And that's what was really interesting about it, because I noticed they were all people, you know, and they were beautiful. So I thought, okay, if I'm dead, do I still have a body? So I looked down the front of me to see if I had a body, and I could see my hair going down the front of me. I could see my clothes. I was barefoot, so I saw my feet, and I could actually feel the grass. I'm standing in the grass. I could feel the grass on my feet. I could smell that scent of the grass. It reminded me of when I was a little girl and my dad used to cut the grass, and you'd get that fresh scent of fresh cut grass. And I really like that smell. So that's what I could smell. I could smell the flowers. I could smell the fresh cut grass, you know. Um, but I could feel the coolness of that grass on my feet. And so when they told me I was dead, and I could see I still had a body, and what was interesting is I still thought like me, I felt like me, I looked like me, only a much better version. And it was like my identity was important, and everybody else's identity was important. My brothers, I don't, I didn't know why until many, many years later. And it probably only meant something to me, but they showed me, it was like taking a screenshot of the weave pattern that their clothes were made out of. And it was an expensive linen that they were wearing, very soft, very it was a herringbone weave pattern. And for some reason that was important. And it was like they had taken a shot of it and stuck it right up here in my face like this for me to see that weave pattern. And I was like, okay, that must mean something, but what, I don't know, but okay. So I made a note of it, and we just kept it going. Um, but it was time for my life review at this point. That's why all these people were there, and they were surrounding me. And for me, it was like watching a black and white movie on an old-fashioned movie reel. And so I'm watching this. it's like the screen just came down out of the sky or out of nowhere. There's a screen, and I'm watching this black and white movie. It's moving real, real fast, like the old fashioned movies would go really, really fast. And I just watched it, and it was me as a baby, me as a little girl, me as a teenager, me as a young mother, or, on and on. From the moment I was born until the moment I died, but I made no judgment about anything. I just watched it like, okay, that's nice. Now what? You know? And so the only thing I felt was love and acceptance, and I felt no judgment whatsoever. And yet here's God behind me. And I was raised to think, always raised to believe that God will judge you. But he didn't. He loved me. I just felt loved, total love. And I thought, okay, so I guess whoever taught me that got that wrong, because I thought to myself, that was over quick. My life must have been boring. I missed something. I don't know what it is. And it was the judgment thing. But I felt no judgment. I didn't judge me. Nobody else judged me. God didn't judge me. There was no judgment. I just felt love, total acceptance, like I've never felt. I've never felt that here on earth. This was that in itself was huge for me, because I've never been accepted here. I didn't have to worry about my makeup or my hair or, my clothes. Am I too fat? You know, so, because I've been told that my whole life: you're fat, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're this, you're that, or whatever. And I believed it, and I worried about it a lot, still do. But I didn't feel that there. I was just like I was supposed to be there. That was the place. So after I had my life review, I heard a male voice say, "What you put out into the universe will come back to you." And I knew the voice was God's. And it was probably because that was the message I was supposed to get in my life review, and I missed it. You know, it just went like this. So God was reiterating to me, this is what you're supposed to learn from your life review. And that was it. I mean, I started feeling like I'd never heard words like that. So I didn't understand that concept. What is he talking about? But it's really an easy concept. A lot of people call it karma. Other people call it, whatever they call it. But um, I the way it was shown to me was a boomerang. And the it was shown to me that way because I felt like I was being infused. I had an IV in me, and a gigantic IV bottle of wisdom and divine knowledge. And I was being infused with all this wisdom and knowledge. And it was like who God, I didn't even have to, I couldn't even formulate the words to ask the questions before the answers were there. Who God was, what God was, how he put the universe together. And the only way I can explain that is he took this and put it together, and there it is. It was real simple. But we human beings make everything so complicated. It takes us 10 chalkboards long with equations that you can't even read to explain a real simple concept. And I kept looking at God, and he was that formless presence, but I kept looking at him and I kept saying, God, you're so cool. You are so awesome. You're so simple. And we human beings make you complicated, and you're not complicated. None of this is complicated. And so that was a huge, huge revelation for me. Then my brothers started walking around with me, and the huge living presence, it went, I mean, it was still with me, but it was not hovering over me like it had been. And we started going through a tour. So I could see these buildings on the outskirts of the glorious city. And I saw a building that looked like what I would call a spiritual hospital, not like a medical hospital like we have here, where you have IVs and doctors and, machines. It's not like that. It's more of I want to call it a respite place, or wow, I don't know, but it's for people who die very traumatically, who die very quickly, and they have absolutely no one to tell them what's happened. So, like what happened with me, I had no idea that I was dead until my brothers told me that I had died. So there's people that need to be brought gently to the awareness of what happened. You had this accident, this, whatever it was, and you're here now, and you're here with us, and we love you, and we're going to help you and teach you what you need to know, and you're okay. So I learned that everything in heaven is very, very gentle. And there are people who actually have jobs. They are mentors and teachers, and, your great great grandparents and your great 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 grandparents and your aunts and uncles and cousins and whoever. They're all there. And you get to see them again. And they're there to help in different ways. And I saw people that were ministering to these other people that were in this spiritual hospital behind the building. And it too was made of like alabaster marble. And behind that particular building, of course, there's the landscaping is just beyond. And there were it looked like two great big pools of water, but the water was like alive. It was like living water. It was alive. It was healing pools. I called them healing pools. So then I saw a place where babies and children go when they pass away, and they are loved, and they are cared for, and they are perfectly fine. And they're running around. It's like a great big gigantic playground. And I've said it in a few other interviews, it's kind of like a place where it's Toys R Us on steroids. I mean, they've got everything that they could possibly want to play with. And I saw children of all different ages. They were running around, playing, laughing, having a good time. And there were great grandmas there taking care of them, and angels and mentors and teachers. But I did see there was a family connection. You could tell. And I learned that the babies and children, when they get there, they are the age that they are when they pass, but they will grow up physically and spiritually until they get to 25 or 30 or whatever that perfect age is that everybody seemed to be. Now, if an older person were to pass away, they would be old until when they died, they would be old. But then once they entered the garden, they would go down in age back to their 25 or 30 or whatever the age is. So everybody, you either grow up or go back, and everybody's that beautiful age. And I saw this building was incredible. It was like a big gigantic library. I call it the Hall of Knowledge. Now, I don't know if that's what it's really called, but that's what I called it, because it was a giant library. It was huge, and It was like one of the old-fashioned libraries that you would see on TV or something. It had the 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 wooden mahogany, the shelves that go from the floor to the ceiling, and the ceiling is like so high you can hardly see the end of it. And there are ladders that move around, and you climb up the ladder, and I saw there were chandeliers and tables and things like that. But there are books, these books, where they could pick out anything they wanted to know. If they wanted to know about ships and had never knew anything about ships, they could grab a book on a ship, and instant knowledge of whatever interests them is in this room. There was, let's see, I saw, and these are just buildings on the outskirts of the glorious city. There is a golden wall that surrounds the glorious city. It's a big, thick, tall, beautiful golden wall. And I figured that was my barrier. If I couldn't go past that barrier. But on the other side, like the glorious city is right here in the middle. And if you look to the other side, you could see the mountains. You could see there was a stream, and it had rocks in the stream, and there was a waterfall that was going over. And it looked like a million diamonds in that water. It was just incredible. I heard music. It sounded like there were 10 orchestras there, and what I learned was that everything has a vibrational sound. So the trunk of a tree has a vibrational sound. The leaves themselves have a vibrational sound, like a tinkling sound, or the water the rocks that are in the stream could be the drum sound. And then you have the water that's swishing the sound. And the birds, I heard birds singing. There were animals in the fields. It was incredible. It was just, but I learned that all of these vibrational sounds, the grass, everything has a sound. And you bring each of those sounds together, and they make this orchestra. And every single thing and person is singing praises to God. And that's what that music was. It was the most gorgeous music I have ever heard. And I call it big music because it's lots of instruments, many pieces put together to make this music. My brothers took me to this other, it was a building, but I didn't go into the building. I just went into the doorway, and there was a party that was going on in this room, and it was decorated like, oh my goodness. There was a man on the left-hand side in a suit, and he was playing this gigantic grand piano. And on top of the piano was a candelabra, a crystal vase with red roses spilling out and over and onto the piano. And so he was sitting there playing this music. In the center of the room was this huge chandelier. And there were so many people, you couldn't count them. The women were in beautiful gowns, the men were in suits, and it was like a formal party. And on the right side of the room, there were tables put together, and there was white linen tablecloths on the tables, and there were silver trays. And on the trays, there was, food, fruits and vegetables and breads and whatever, all of that stuff was on the table. And there were big flower arrangements and candelabras on either side. So it was a very festive, very detailed a party that was going on. And I've been asked before, was that a welcoming party for you? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't go to it. I just watched it. It was beautiful. Really was. I also noticed there were houses. There I saw a house that was made of stones that kind of glistened in the light. Um, it was sitting on a bluff, and there were ocean waves, so I could see the ocean as the waves were coming up onto the rocks. Sitting behind that house, like a little ways down, there was another house that looked like an old English cottage, and it was just magnificent. And behind it were these rose gardens. Just everything was just so full and glowing. And the only thing I can say is that it was glowing from the inside out, and it was the light of God that was making everything just glow and beautiful. So my brothers continued showing me around, and I was able to see all this detail. And then there was a grove of trees just to the very corner to the right side as you're looking at the glorious city. And I have no idea what those trees were, but I saw Jesus coming out of he was just walking out of that grove of trees, and I just kind of stood there. You know, he was so beautiful. So when he walked out and he walked up to me, my brothers disappeared, and I have no idea where they went. But I was just kind of looking up, you know, because Jesus was a lot taller than me, and I was just looking up at him, and he was so beautiful. But he said to me, "I love you. I'm with you. Don't be afraid." And so that was, I think, his way of telling me that I was going to be coming back. But I didn't catch it. It went over my head. I was just looking at him and feeling his love and his compassion and he was just gorgeous, just absolutely. I don't even, if I wasn't so stunned, I probably would have hugged him. I was just, um, but he walked me over to this place. It was on the right hand side, a little ways down from where his grove of trees were. It was a wooded glen. And as you walked into the wooded glen, you could see the tall pine trees, the tall oak trees, and you could see the sunlight coming down. And on the ground I saw like a bunch of pine needles. It looked like a rug of pine needles and pine cones and these little blue flowers that popped up through the pine needles. And there was a log that was sitting there. And I sat down on the end of the log. And when I did that, Jesus walked away. And there was a man sitting on the other end of the log. And I knew that man was God, but he didn't look like Jesus. He looked totally different. And I was like, oh, okay, this is God. You know, God had shorter, curly black hair, and he had blue eyes. Jesus had long, very dark, curly hair. He had a dark olive skin. He had brown eyes. He was like 5'11", 6 foot, something like that, 5'10", 5'11". I know I had to look up. But this other man, he looked like an older version of Jesus, but not. I don't know how to explain it. But like the father of a son, there's an extension there or something. But anyway, so Jesus walked away and God's sitting there and God looks at me. Well, he was doodling a little bit. He had a stick and he was messing around with I think he was just waiting for me to quit being in awe and look at him and talk to him. But he said to me, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I was like, "What?" I didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever said anything like that to me. I never thought about it. And when I said, "What?" He said, "What would you do if it was just me and you?" And I was like, "I don't know." I didn't know what to say. So he said, "Come with me." So we walked further into the wooded glen, and there was an opening, um, a clearing, and he waved his hand. And when he waved his hand, he like opened up the sky, and I could see the, I don't know, the vastness of the universe. It was like looking into universe after universe. That's how big it was. I could see planets, I could see stars, I could see clusters, I could see the gases, or what I thought were gases. But it was, like galaxies. I could see galaxy after galaxy, all these things. And then I I looked at God, and I said, "That's huge. That is so big." And I said, "And it's empty. It doesn't, there's no trees, no people, no cars, no animals, no nothing." I said, "If it's all of that and just me and you would be so sick of me after the first 10 minutes with all my questions." And he threw his head back. And so I said, "No, I don't think so." He threw his head back and he started laughing. And when he did, his eyes sparkled, but his laughter was so contagious that I started laughing. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, did I just say that? What is wrong with me?" So anyway, we go back and we sit back down on the log. And as we sit there, he asks me the question again. "What would you do if it was just me and you? No parents, no husband, no children, nobody, no friends, no one, just me and you." And I said, "Well," I still didn't have an answer. So I'm looking at this tree and I directed my attention to the tree because I had nothing to answer that with. And but I noticed the detail of the bark, and I could see the roots beneath the ground, and I saw the roots pulling the nutrients out of the soil, and how the nutrients traveled up the trunk and into the branches and then into the leaves. And I could see how the leaves cleaned the air and we breathe the air. And so how everything is connected and very interdependent upon everything else. I mean, that's how, and I think that's what he wanted me to see. He was trying to help me sort this question out in my mind. So I noticed the tree and I said, "Now," I said, "God, your 100th name is God is everywhere, God is nowhere, and God is in me." And he said, "Yes, that's right." And that's a huge concept to come out of my mouth. That's huge. And then I looked at the tree again and I said, "God, you made this tree. You are in this tree. So when I see this tree, I see you." And he said, "Yes, that's right." Well, then I said the same thing about my parents. "You made them, you're in them. When I see them, I see you." I said the same thing about my children. And he was putting these thoughts in my head because I was literally thinking about these people. And then was thinking about someone that I didn't particularly like because this person was very cruel and has hurt not only me, but it has hurt other people. And I said, "God, There are people in this world who hurt other people, but yet you made them. You are in them. So when I see them, I see you. And he said, that's right. And that's where the free will thing comes in. Is he made us, he's in us, and we're all perfectly made, and we're all good, and we're all perfect in his eyes, but we choose to do right or not, to hurt others or not. It's not, he's not a bad God. He's not a bad person. He didn't create a bad person, but he did create a perfect person who had free will, which means you get to decide, you get to choose for yourself whether you're going to do good or whether you're going to hurt someone and take someone else's free will away. And then we have the snowball and the whole thing starts. But that's what I learned from that. And then he said to me, now I have a question for you. And I said, okay. And he said, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Well, I had been told, like I said earlier, my whole life that I was not worth anything. And so I did not have a proper answer. You don't give the creator of everything, you don't tell him that he made nothing. And that's what I wanted to say. I don't see anything in there. But so I said, well, okay, God, you made me, you're in me. So when I look in this mirror, I see you. And he was like, yeah, that's right. And then he went further and he was like, I don't make junk. I don't make mistakes. Don't listen to the world. I was listening to the world. I was letting the world dictate for me who I was and whether I was worthy or not, based on the world's opinion. And he was like, don't listen to them. Their opinion doesn't matter. It's what I think of you that matters. It's what I say you are. And I made you exactly who you are, exactly the way you are for a purpose, for a reason. And everything is exactly as it should be. So don't listen to those people. They don't know what they're talking about. And that was, he also said to me that in the vastness of all that he has created, we are intricately, human beings are very tiny in comparison to the multi-universes and the mountains, the Himalayan mountains and the oceans and things like that. But yet, size-wise, he was talking size-wise, we're very small. You might be very small in comparison. However, each and every one of us is intricately important to everything he created. And if we were not here, his creation changes and becomes something else. And that was huge for me because I didn't want to be here anymore. So then I realized that if we wake up in the morning and we're breathing and we're moving and we're awake and we're alive, it means God is thinking about us every single moment of every single day. And he can think about you that way, and he can think about me that way, and he can think about someone in Africa and someone in Hawaii and someone in Canada and someone in, wherever. And he can do it all at one time because God is everywhere. And he loves each and every one of us as if we were the only ones he ever created. So it's always been you and God, or me and God, or whoever in God, each individual person. It's about your relationship with God, you and God, period. And so that's what he was. But if he stopped thinking about us for 1 second, we would just be gone like that. Poof, we're gone. So his love is so infinite and so big and so huge. And he's limitless. You know, there's nothing that he cannot do. Nothing. So, there was a little bit more that went on after that. We had our conversation. And then I was sent back to my body. Now, if there was a conversation between me and him about me coming back, it was probably not a good one. I was probably kicking and screaming all the way back. But I did come back to my body, and I was laying on the ground next to the stairs. And, when help got there, I have a right bundle branch block in my heart, and I have seizures, a seizure disorder from the lightning strike, brain injury. But that's it.
Amazing. That's an amazing story. I think it's one of the most complete narrations of a trip to heaven. And I've heard other stories, and some of these elements that you've mentioned are present in other stories. So it's really amazing. And I'm really glad that you shared it with us. And I think you also had some other NDEs, right? And I would like you to talk about these other NDEs in another podcast. Are you willing? So
I am willing. Thank you.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.